Hello, everyone. Rob Guest from football.london here, and welcome to the latest episode of Golden Guest Talk Tottenham Bracket Hotspur, sponsored by NordVPN. Joining me today, it's Alice the Gold. You all right?
I am, but you threw me. I was not expecting that. That was not planned, or well, it certainly wasn't mentioned that you were going to do that. Are you going to have to do that every single week now?
Uh,
Please don't.
possibly. I, I don't want to do it every single week.
No,
We don't want to rebrand, do we? So,
no, nobody tells us what to say or to call our show. Yeah, no, I'm all right. It's just, I hope you are too. Yeah, one of those matches, isn't it, that we've got to talk about, among many other things, but one of those matches that we can go, oh, there were really positive moments. Oh, there were really rubbish moments. And ultimately, it's another defeat in the defeat column, unfortunately, in the Premier League table.
yeah, so Tottenham headed into Wednesday's game against Man City, 3 successive wins in the Premier League, looking to make it 4 and try and close that gap between themselves and the top half. Unfortunately, it didn't happen. City now look to be doing all right at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, going on the previous record in N17. A 1-0 win, courtesy of Erling Haaland's goal in the first half. Spurs did have some chances, notably in the second half, but just couldn't restore parity. So there's now 9 points between Spurs and the top half of the Premier League table. Bit of a wait now until the next Premier League game for Spurs against Bournemouth next weekend. No game Saturday or Sunday this week because Spurs are out of the FA Cup. There's still plenty for us to talk about as we look back at this City game. So first things first, and what was a big talking point before and after the game, and probably still continues to be, Ange's team selection.
Yeah. I get his logic after how he explained it. His explanation was that he wants to give Odobert, Doggy, and Johnson game time. He wants them to get their minutes up because he feels that with this kind of period of matches in March where they go back to having Thursday, Sunday for 4 games in 11 days, I think it is. He wants to be able to rotate, and he's going to have to, which, we've seen over recent months. Absolutely, they do need to be able to have almost like a, 5, 6, 7 changes maybe for those games, which is going to be amusing because we're all going to moan about it, despite the fact that it's been desperately needed over recent months. But that doesn't stop me from feeling that this was a missed opportunity for Spurs. It easily could have gone the other way. Yes, the first half was potentially disastrous. They could have been 2 or 3 behind at least at the break. But second half, they could have justified his selection. Those 3 players all did well enough in the second half and were starting to change the game, turn it around. And then the subs came off the bench and kind of only further confirmed that. And yes, they really should have got a point from the game at least. And had they got a point or 3 points, you're probably coming away saying, okay, fair play, we get it. But result, unfortunately, colours everything. And it felt like a missed opportunity because if I'm a Man City player and I'm looking at that starting 11 when I kind of rock up to the ground and I see that 2 of the players that have caused the most damage to us as a club in Man City, Son and Kulusevski, who have scored countless goals in recent seasons and caused untold problems, if they're on the bench, you're probably thinking, oh, okay, right, well, that's easier from the start. Just psychologically, I don't know, Man City, with the amount they've won, don't psychologically need too much, but probably in their current vein of form, they probably do this season. And I think that probably would have been a big relief for them. And then Jed Spence as well, who is terrifying kind of opposition teams right now when he's playing. Just to see those 3 players come out of the team, I think it would have given them a little lift. And it was a very young team, wasn't it? Second youngest team in Premier League history that Spurs have put out. The youngest starting 11, I think it's 33 years they've put out. So an average age of, I think it was 23 years and something, I can't remember. I might even have it here actually. But it was, yeah. Oh, sorry. I thought I had the figure right in front of me and I don't. Oh, yes, I do. 23 years and 243 days. Have you read the stat? Do you know when the youngest one was?
No, I'm sure you'll tell me though.
I have, only because it's right in front of me. 1992 against Sheffield Wednesday. They played a team that had an average age of 23 years and 97 days. But yeah, it's one of those where the result changes everything, of course, but it did feel like a missed opportunity. What did you think?
I've no issue with the changes. I just think they probably should have been made against Ipswich rather than City.
Could you have done that with Odobert? Because Odobert
No,
couldn't probably play an hour.
that's what I was going to say. The only one you probably couldn't have done is Odobert, because you're just increasing his playing time at the moment after so long out. Last Saturday playing Ipswich, who were 18th, playing Man City on Wednesday, who were 4th. The game at Portman Road was the opportunity to rest Son and Kulusevski for me, rather
devil's advocate. Or playing the putting myself in the mind of Ange Postecoglou, was the Ipswich game a bit of more of a must-win in terms of you have to be going to a side like that down the bottom and winning, whereas maybe people don't expect you to definitely beat City?
Maybe, but then again,
it was a tough game.
Yeah, very much. What I'd say is then, if you're going to keep him in for Ipswich, when actually are you going to take him out of the team?
Well, that's the other issue, isn't it? You had to rest Porro because he played so many minutes.
Yeah. But I mean, there's no guarantee if Kulusevski, Son, and Spence started that Spurs would have fared any better in the first half.
No, they have notoriously been pants in first halves for quite a lot of the season.
What I probably would say, in the second half, were Spurs better before the changes, maybe?
Absolutely.
Better chances.
Oh, I see. You mean like better, not just better than the first half, better first period than second period of the second half?
Yeah.
Difficult one, because they had a few late chances as well, didn't they? And Sonny forced to say, I'd say it was probably much of a muchness. But either way, the point can rightly stand that they'd already started to look a lot better with the players on the pitch.
Yeah. And what I would also say is we've gone so long with Ange having limited players, saying players need a rest. So then when you have a full squad, not a full squad, near enough a full squad available, and then you don't make changes, it's like, well, you've got to make changes at some point. But what a lot of people will point to as well, that there was, 4 days between the games, 5 days. And now we've got a long period, 8 days, to the AZ Alkmaar game in the Europa League. I think he needed to change it, but for me, Son and Kulusevski should have come out of the team against Ipswich.
Yeah, I get where you're coming from. I just feel like there was this almost a pressure to win at Ipswich. And yeah, I mean, to be honest, again, another game where early on they could have been put well behind in the game at Ipswich as well. But I mean, we'll talk about some of those players. I think all the players pretty much that came in did well enough. Probably Odobert and Udogie more so than Johnson, although Johnson still could have come away with an assist, although that's apparently not a good stat and not worthy of noting. Anyone that's not aware what I'm talking about there, we had a funny little moment I did with Ange on Tuesday where I was asking about Dane Scarlett and how important it was for him to get that kind of assist at Portman Road at the club where he had obviously had a tough loan spell. And he kind of spoke about Dane and then had a little bit of a rant about assists and assists not being an effective way of measuring anyone, which I kind of agree to in certain aspects. I don't think it's the be all and end all, because you could kind of say like goals aren't either, because it was only a scrappy kind of close range goal. It doesn't really count. I didn't quite get where he was going with it. I got it to a degree, but then you can say that about any stat really. It's also like pre-assist. I'd love pre-assist to be kind of something that people kind of count, but then just as much you could say, well, that was only like a 2-foot touch to someone else as a pre-assist. But wasn't it Modric was always seen as the king of the pre-assist? And then so after this rant about assists, he then goes, "Oh yeah, but Dane's was good." Brilliant, thanks. I forgot where I was now. I've gone off on a whole thing about.
Just quickly going back to the changes, I need to mention the 3 players who came into the team were Pedro Porro, James Maddison, Wilson Odobert.
Yeah.
Now, that's 3 very good players coming
yeah.
into the team. It's not like he's gone outside the ground before the game and gone, "Oh, do you fancy your game?"
Is
Is
that
it?
what
And
they do
just
at
puts
Everton?
like, well, I'm hoping so I can have a game at some point. But it's 3 good players coming into the team. It's not like 3 young lads who've never played or anything like that.
Yeah. Although
And
Porro had a tough day.
he did.
He did. But no, I get what you're saying. And like I said, I do feel like even if Sarr puts that late header in, I think probably the team selection isn't looked at. Even with a point, I don't think it's looked at as much. It's football, isn't it? It's fine margin, those tiny little fine lines. But yeah, there's just still a part of me that feels like with 8 days between that game and the Alkmaar game, you probably could have played at least one of those. I don't know who it'd be. That's the other issue as well. To be fair, I'm kind of starting to talk myself out of it as well, because you could say you could play Kulusevski, but then that means taking Johnson out. That's probably the one, I suppose, isn't it? Sonny, you're taking Odobert out, and Odobert did well and did genuinely need the minutes. You could see that. Spence it's a question for you really. Would Spence have dealt with Doku better than Porro?
Yeah, I think so. Spence is defensively Spurs' best fullback, I think, out of Porro and Udogie. And yeah, I mean, he knows Doku as well, doesn't he? Played with him at Rennes.
Yes, you reminded me of that after I'd done a piece where I'd failed to mention it, so I had to add it in quickly.
Yeah, and I think we've said before, Spence maybe looks better on the left in Ange's system. But then again, I think that's probably come from the fact that he's played 90% of his football at Tottenham as a left back.
We haven't got a big sample size on the right, have we?
No, we've not. But I think he knows Doku. He's defensively Spurs' best fullback. Probably would have coped better, and I think that's what some Spurs fans had an issue going into the game. Porro coming up against Doku, because a lot of opposition teams have got a lot of joy down Tottenham's right this season. The amount of goals we've seen when there's just so much space behind Porro, and teams have capitalised. And as bad as it was from a Tottenham perspective in terms of the space left for Doku, he was fantastic. He caused no end of problems with his running, pace, trickery, skill. And Tottenham were lucky it was only 1 goal at halftime. That could have been 3 or 4. The amount of chances Doku created and City passed up. But yes, Spence may have been the one who fared better, but it is what it is. We're not going to know now, are we?
No, this is true. Although, as he put under his Instagram post, we'll meet again, something like that. I'll meet next time or something like that. That's Spence on Doku's one. Doku's terrific. I really like him as a player. I mean, he tore Alexander-Arnold apart, didn't he? Against Liverpool as well. It's like, this is the thing. I know Porro's going to get dug out for it. And to be fair to Porro, I thought actually as the second half wore on, he kind of got a handle on him a little bit better. Mostly, I suppose, because Spurs were kind of pushing up the other end of the pitch as well. But yeah, he's done that to a lot of players. He's a terrific player. He's one of those that just fits in any team in the world, really. He's kind of like almost like the Sané replacement. I always loved watching Sané there, and just like shocked when he ended up kind of going and not really finding a space in the team. And I think Doku's kind of the successor. But anyway, this isn't a Man City pod. This isn't. They haven't made us change the name to Golden Guest Talk Citizens or Chat Citizens. I don't know how that would work. But yeah, you've got to feel that Spence would have done better, but we'll never really know, especially this season anyway.
I mean, as I was saying, Tottenham were lucky. It was only the 1 goal because Haaland had a couple of chances. Savinho as well hit one over into the ground over the crossbar. And I think Vicario made a couple of saves as well. But Spurs, on the other hand, didn't really threaten until probably the cusp of half-time with that Kevin Danzo header from about 16 yards out. The Odobert had a decent run in the first 5 minutes at his opponent. But other than that, Spurs, unfortunately, just didn't lay a glove on City, did they?
Nah, first half was poor. There was a few that, like when the halftime whistle went, there's a few of us kind of turned to each other in the press box and like, how in the world are they 1-0 with this scoreline? It is mad. And irony is that the goal actually was a bit fortunate for City. It's Doku's low pass. It's actually Johnson gets a touch on it and knocks it straight into the path of Haaland to finish, and he finishes well. I mean, that's probably a key difference. This was put to Ange afterwards as well, is that City getting Haaland back to just take one moment like that and Spurs not having Solanke. I think that was such a key thing. And this is, I know it's so simplistic, and we'll talk about Mathys Tel later. I think Solanke plays. I think Spurs probably win that game. I just think it's a completely different game. I think he's so important to Spurs. And the fact that we saw the version of Spurs in the second half that we kind of want to see going forward, the aggression, the pressing and everything, I think you have Solanke at the top of that, and it's a completely different Tottenham. There's not only is he able to potentially finish off chances, but I think more chances are being created for people around him because of just his hold-up play. But yeah, sorry, I probably just didn't want to talk about the first half. I was trying to think of something else to talk about. Yeah, the first half was poor. I mean, Postecoglou's explanation for it was he felt they were too eager, Spurs, and that they were trying to rush getting the ball forward, and they were losing it because they were just playing sloppy passes and things like that. I think there's probably some truth to that. I think there's a little bit of a kind of a fear factor as well. They kind of started reasonably brightly and then quickly just faded and let City take charge. And once you do that with the quality they've got and the wing play of Doku and Savinho, pinning them back, it just became a little bit of a camped in the Spurs half, hoping for a break kind of game. Whereas the second half, we saw exactly what Spurs were capable of doing. And just a really, really disappointing first half. Again, indebted to Vicario in some aspects. I thought actually Danso was a little bit wobbly in the first half. There were a couple of times he ran up the pitch, tried to kind of make things happen, and then struggled to get back. Even for the goal itself, he got back, but he didn't look entirely switched on. Udogie, of course, caught up the pitch as well for that moment. I thought Archie Gray did all right. I thought in the initial stages, I'm thinking, oh no, Haaland is really going to cause him a nightmare. But again, 18-year-old, learning with every single game. I actually thought physically he and Danso started to get the hang of Haaland as it wore on. Actually, Maddison put in some fierce challenges as well, which is quite good. Some really good sliding tackles, and maybe the greatest yellow card I've ever seen given when he like rugby tackled. I think it was Savinho. And it was just like, I'm not letting you go, I'm not letting you go. And he was almost dragging him for a couple of yards because he's probably a more powerful player. But yeah, great yellow card for the team.
Amid those first half struggles, I thought two players who did stand out and deserve praise, Rodrigo Benteke and Lucas Bergvall in the middle of the park. I thought they were really good. Bergvall just got a really good motor on him, just won't stop, always look to get forward. And Benteke putting in some vital tackles, using the ball well. And that, as Ange said the other day when he was asked about his contract situation and the hope of a new contract at Spurs, that he's starting to get back to the levels he wants to be at, which is a good sign. And I think you can see from the past few team selections, we've questioned, what is Tottenham's best midfield? But I think going on the past few team selections, that Bergvall and Benteke take up two of the three spots, and they've been fantastic. I think Bergvall, there was one point in the first half where he ended up on the floor, looked like he'd lost the ball to his opponent, but then somehow still managed to come out with it. It was like he was almost breakdancing, just getting the ball, and then managed to get back to his feet. But I know he came in for some praise from Pep after the game, and fully deserved it as well.
Yeah, he's found his rrhythm. Is probably the best way to put it. Now you can see he's like, oh, this is the Premier League. I get it. Okay. And he's raised his strength. His strength is so much better now. He won 7 of his 11 ground duels on the day and won his 1 aerial duel as well. And he just left Kovacic in his wake a couple of times. I think it was it might have been the Spurs play interview where he was asked about his little acceleration that he's kind of starting to pull out of the bag. And he's like, I didn't actually know I had that. He's like, I didn't know I was that fast kind of thing. I wonder whether just that strength work has just kind of as a byproduct has ended up giving him this little bit of explosive power now, and he just steps away. He's just got quick feet, clever mind, and just motors away from players. And when you're a team that wants to break the lines of the opposition, it's crucial because you're taking 2, maybe 3 players suddenly out of the system. I think he's just going to be terrific. And Bentancur, yeah, I thought he was good. I still wonder whether he'll end up being an 8 for Spurs at some point, or whether he's just better in a pairing, which I guess he kind of was with Bergvall for long periods of the game. Basuma's so far in a distance right now, isn't he? He's literally waving over the hill like, "Hello, remember me," because Bergvall's just one of the first names on the team sheet right now. I know he's 19 now, but I wouldn't want to take him out of that team because he's got the strength, he's got tactical awareness now as well, but he's also got that bravery that makes the Postecoglou system work. And you can't always say that about Basuma. Sometimes Basuma has those head loss moments. And look, don't get me wrong, as a 19-year-old, Bergvall just has those. I think there was one in the second half when he gave the ball away, like on the edge of his box. It's going to happen. But you just believe with him in the team that he's kind of rising to the challenges.
Yeah, just on Bentancur as a number 8, his best spell at Tottenham was those probably 3 or 4 months prior to that ACL injury at Leicester 2 years ago, where he was chipping in with those important goals in the big games, in the moments when he needed to be. But I think what helped him was the partnership with Pierre-Emile Højbjerg in the middle. Højbjerg just being the base, just allowing Bentancur to go forward, more of a box-to-box role, just getting up there, helping out in attack and chipping in with these important goals. And maybe that will be the case next season. If Spurs
with Archie Gray.
Well, if it's Archie Gray, if it's Cardozo from Betis, whoever is going to take on this number 6 role, because Spurs need to look at it in the summer. That's got to be a priority.
100%.
And if you can get someone who's brilliant, like Rodri at Man City, someone of that ilk, who can do that job, then that'll just free up Bentancur, and you might see a bit more of him going forward. But yeah, he's playing well, but I think to maybe further unleash him a bit, a new number 6 could be the key.
Yeah, I think so. I think he's shown enough now that you probably do tie him down to a bit of a longer contract. I know he's had his issues this season, his suspensions for various reasons. But I think if you're purely talking about on-pitch stuff, you're seeing a player getting back to where he was pre kind of ACL and everything. And yeah, there were moments even on Wednesday night where you could see he gets up to the edge of the box. He's trying to play the progressive through the lines pass into the final third. And yeah, I'd like to see him kind of get back to that kind of slightly further up the pitch role. It may, I think it's probably going to be within a 2, like a double pivot thing, which allows him to do a bit of the taking the ball off the defence, which he's good at as well. But I would like to see him get in more advanced positions because he's got that about his game.
Yeah, he does. Just on Bentancur as well, Ange did save him in the second half because there was that moment when Doku broke on the halfway line. He tussled for the ball with Bentancur. If Doku had gone down, I think Bentancur gets a second yellow card then, and he's off. Already missed 7 games because of that domestic FA ban. Missed 1 game late. Was it late December, early January? Because of 5 yellow cards.
Yep.
So this would have been another 1-match suspension. Because at that time, Ange was planning for a triple substitution.
It was.
Because Sonny, Decky and Spence were on the touchline for what seemed like an eternity.
Ball just wouldn't go out of play. Just couldn't get him on,
Then as soon as that incident with Doku and Bentancur, that's when Ange went, right, Pat Mathys Tel's coming on. We're making 4 changes in 1. So
no Basuma.
I know. It doesn't look good for him, does it?
It really doesn't. I know it's premature to say because, something could happen to Bentancur and suddenly Basuma plays every game for the rest of the season or something. But it feels like at this moment we're leading towards something, aren't we? I think his contract's getting towards as well, isn't it? I'm trying to remember now.
Well, it'll be 3 years this summer since he signed. So did he probably sign a 5-year contract? So he might be coming into the last 2.
I think it'll be getting there. And I think with him, it sounds awful to say it, but is he kind of worth the kind of the little bits and pieces, issues they've had, the inconsistent performances? On his day, he's brilliant, but I just don't know. I mean, if you're going to ask me right now who deserves a new deal out of him and Bentancur, it's only one decision to make, isn't it? And I think when you're looking at the bench and he's bringing on someone like Sarr, I know they're chasing the game, so Sarr offers you a little bit more and could have scored the late equaliser, but yeah, it doesn't look good for Basuma. It's probably the best way to put it.
Well, I think if you look at Basuma's 3 seasons at Spurs, you're probably looking at, in terms of consistency, you've got 3 months of really good football out of him.
Yeah.
The first 3 months of Andrew's reign, and then everything since then has just been really stop-start for him.
Yeah.
See it in glimpses.
2026, by the way, contract.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, a decision there will have to be made then, coming up. Right, halfway through the pod, so Ali, you can tell everyone now about the benefits of using NordVPN.
I did. I can't remember if we mentioned the last one or not. We had a nice comment, didn't we? Did I mention that in the last one?
No, I don't think you did. No.
What was it? Is it saying something about that they'd used it? God, you remember it better than me.
Was that the one person who asked, where did we meet? Was it that?
Oh, was that as well? Well, that was not what I was trying to get to. It was more the fact that they were saying that was quite funny because yes, where did we meet? It's like at work because this is a podcast for work. But they did say also that they'd gone abroad, I think, and had used NordVPN, and it had worked absolutely perfect for them. So that's what we want to hear. You know, it's great to hear actual user experiences that we're pushing something because we believe in it, because it's worked for us, and other people are finding that it works for them as well. So it's not just any old thing that we're trying to promote because they happen to be the partners of the show. It happens to be something that we use, and I shall use it again, NordVPN, next week when I am in Alkmaar and Amsterdam as well, which I think is going to have to be my base because it's easier to get to and quite close to Alkmaar. But if you're not aware already what we're talking about when we talk about NordVPN, it is the fastest VPN in the world, and that means there's no buffering, no lagging, and you can stream your favorite shows from anywhere in the world without your bandwidth throttling. It's a service that you can use to watch whatever you want back home. If you happen to be abroad, you just set your device to thinking it's still back in the UK, because sometimes you might have found that when you're heading abroad, maybe you've got a long train journey or something, you sit down, you want to watch some things from your own streaming services from back home, and your phone will tell you, sorry, this region does not support that sort of stuff. Whereas you can make your phone think it's back in the UK. And likewise, you can be in the UK and make your phone, your tablet, whatever, think it's in a completely different country. And that might help you book airplane tickets, concert tickets, hotels, whatever it is, at potentially a cheaper price, because it might be cheaper if it thinks you're in the country that you're booking them for. So so many benefits. There's some security aspects as well. If you're using public Wi-Fi, it helps to a degree with that as well. And on top of all of that, you can get a terrific discount with our version of the NordVPN plan, which you can get if you go to nordvpn.com/goldguest. Our link will give you 4 extra months on the normal 2-year plan, and there's no risk with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. The link, in case you just missed it there, is in the episode description box.
Right, on to the second half and the positive start from Spurs against City. Wilson Odobert playing a key role in that. Spurs' upturn in form in that 15-20 minute period straight after the break. Inches away from scoring. Wicked delivery from Pedro Porro from the right. If Odobert's a bit taller, probably nets that. So it just looked like caught the end of his studs and went wide, and then had another opportunity where he ran into the box, had a shot, took a massive deflection, and then went over. But in those moments in the second half, you saw what big impact he can have on the team when he does, reach those high levels that we've seen from him previously.
I mean, it's mad that was his first start since September. It's just crazy, isn't it? That Carabao Cup game at Coventry. £30 million from Burnley, all the excitement around it. I mean, Postecoglou is so excited about him. He loves him as a player because I think he represents everything he wants his kind of wingers and attackers to do, which is be brave, dribble at players, just run at them full pelt, press hard. He's got the ability, as Núñez found, kind of especially in the second half, he could beat you down the flank and get to the byline and pull the ball across, or he can cut inside. and he's just absolutely happy on either foot, it feels like, as well. He's got the potential with a lot more work to be Spurs' version of Doku. He's got that unpredictability in his play. And you're thinking now, aren't you? Ooh, article idea there. Who could be Spurs' new Doku?
No, I wasn't, but I did mention that in me talking point on Odobert in the morning. It was just that side of the pitch, Doku in the first half, Odobert in the second half.
Yeah, no, fair point. He looked like a rusty, kind of slightly more tentative player in the first half.
Yeah.
I do feel like whoever is the fullback behind him's got a lot of work to do as well. There were a lot of times when Udogie found himself kind of 2v1, and Odobert would kind of leisurely come back and try and half-track the run of the midfielder. And that's something he's going to work on. And of course, fitness will help with that as well. But this was massive for him, I think, to get, 67 minutes under his belt. That would have been huge. And bearing in mind, there was kind of a feeling, wasn't there, among some that maybe we wouldn't get to see much of him at all this season after he had his surgery. Here we are in February. He's made his first starts in September. I think he's only made like 3 starts overall since joining. It's just been so few, isn't it? Everton,
Newcastle away, Cov in the cup.
So this will be 4th, yeah.
4th.
Yeah.
Because his early appearance after the Cov one was AZ at home in the Europa for a matter of minutes, and he got another injury.
Yeah. And I generally think the second half performance and the way he played and how terrified City suddenly looked of him, I do feel like he's going to be a very serious option there. And whether that is on the left, whether that's on the right, it could be either. I think, and you throw Tel into the mix as well, because we'll talk about Tel in a bit, but I still feel like he's going to end up mostly becoming a winger. Suddenly the wing positions, and you've got Mikey Moore as well, and you've got Johnson in there, and Kulusevski occasion as well. I think suddenly there's going to be a lot of strength there and very different options for different games. The key for Odobert now is of course, first off, is getting his sharpness, getting his fitness back, and he'll get better and better, hopefully. And I quite like the fact that often when people come back from hamstring issues, there's a little drop off and there's a little fear. And of course, you're always going to go to Ryan Sessegnon when you kind of think about stuff like that, and his kind of reluctance to take players on when he had the ball. Odobert, there was none of that. He was going at them still, and he still seemed to have the acceleration, which was great. Sometimes they say that, don't they, that after the actual surgery, there's more confidence in your kind of hamstring rather than just recovering from a hamstring injury just kind of through natural means. But he's going to be really exciting. But the key thing for him now is end product, because I think he's played something like 74 senior games, which is still not a lot. He's only just turned 20 not that long ago. 74 games, I think something like 9 goals, 7 assists. And I know he was a very young player through a lot of those games, but I think that's the next step for him, is to become more of a goal threat. And once he can do that, he's going to be terrific. And he's got someone in Postecoglou who's going to, I think, play him at every possible opportunity. And late in games, I think he'll be a huge impact player as well.
Yeah, definitely. What I probably would say in terms of those goals and assists, last year at Burnley played a lot of football, but he was in a struggling team. First year in the Premier League, I think you've got to probably take that into consideration. But if he gets going and can reach even higher levels than he did against City the other night, then Spurs have some player on the hands. Just as an aside, you mentioned Sessegnon started and scored for Fulham the other day against Wolves, which was really nice to see.
It is. It's one of those, I've kind of used the expression before. It is things you love to see. You kind of stick that down on the list, because a bit like when we were saying about, I know very, very, very different degrees, but talking about Bentaleb the other week and coming back and everything, this is obviously a very, very different thing. But the kind of just tough years Sess has had, and to come back and do that, it's brilliant, and long may it continue for him. I'd love to see him do well, and it just shows you how it's so easy for injuries to disrupt the career of even the most talented young players. You're just so beholden to staying fit. Always go back to an interview I did, which was probably one of the most kind of probably most emotional interviews in terms of the subject matter, and the person I was talking to was Terry Dixon at Spurs, who was a young lad coming through the system, 16 years old, was going to be the Irish Wayne Rooney. He was named in an Irish senior squad to train and everything when he hadn't even appeared for the first team. He was that good. And yeah, 2 knee injuries in a row. Other issues then arose from that, and never really had a career of kind of any kind of top level, which he should have done. And there's so many players out there that have not been able to make it. So when one does get to come back, like Sessegnon, it's lovely to see, and hopefully that's all behind him now.
Yeah, we'll talk about Mathys Tel now, because whereas Odobert had a really positive game, Tel, a fellow Frenchman, feeding off scraps when he was played up front. I was looking at the amount of touches he had of the ball in that game, 12 in total. 11 of those were in the first half. Just a lack of service. I think there was times where the ball was just bouncing off him, just couldn't keep it under control. But what I did say in my post-match piece was 19-year-old coming to a new country.
Oh, yeah.
Foreign players, it takes a lot of time for them to adapt. But then again, you've got Kevin Danso, who's come in. It is his second time in England, grew up in the country as well, which helps him. He settled in really well.
Yeah. Yeah. Can I just double check? Did you just say he only touched the ball once in the second half?
I think so, yeah.
That is mad, isn't it? I did not know that. I am learning something from this podcast.
I was having a look at, I think it was FotMob during the game, 11 touches in the first half, 1 in the second.
That
unless
is
they've
mad.
updated them since.
I mean, yeah, I do feel for him. He's been thrust into this kind of role, which, yes, there's like people will tell you that's he wants to play up front more centrally. I don't think that was envisaged as target man, focal point, sole lone striker up top role. I don't really think that's kind of where he's at right now as a 19-year-old, physique wise and physicality and all of that sort of stuff. I know that's technically the same thing. But yeah, he'll fill out and he'll get stronger, and that will maybe be a side to his game. But right now, I think he'll be more of a winger or a player coming off the striker, playing off someone like Solanke, which I know Postecoglou doesn't use much, but he does sometimes in games, will make it a bit more of a 2. And I feel sorry. He's like, it's really weird, isn't it? I think it's just modern football, maybe. But like, he's 19 years old. He's only played 5 games for Spurs, and there's already people writing him off and saying, do we have to take up the option in the summer? It's like, give him a minute. This is one of the most sought after young players kind of out there, so many clubs kind of chasing him and trying to get him, and Spurs managed to get him. Give him a little moment. Give the 19-year-old a chance to settle. With the greatest respect, the early performances of Lucas Berval, he was struggling a little bit. If you took his performance at Galatasaray, for example, you'd probably be turfing him out the club if you're that kind of type that gives them no time. Archie Gray, he's no centre back, kind of stuff like that. It's like, I don't get this kind of new modern thing to write people off straight away. He's just got to get the rhythm of it, like we were talking about with Bergvall. He's got to understand kind of what the English game's all about, and I'm sure he's had a real crash course in it. There was an interesting line as well, which Ange said afterwards, which I think confused a lot of people. He said, Tel probably could do with a rest. And people are like, what? Because obviously you've had all these players that played so many minutes, and they've looked at Tel and thought, well, he's only played 5 matches kind of thing. But what the reason behind that is, I think maybe a better way he could have said it is he's maybe at a higher risk of an injury right now. And that's because first half of the season at Bayern, if you put his minutes together, he played the equivalent of just over 3 matches in the Bundesliga and Champions League. He's barely got any game time in those muscles, in those legs. So to come to Spurs and play lots of minutes in the first 5 games, starting 4 of them, having to run in a really kind of pressing heavy style. Yes, I think there's probably his muscles are feeling it right now. And unfortunately, it's just a period where that's the one department of the squad now that doesn't have the options. It's still waiting for Solanke and Richarlison to come back. And I just maybe think if Postecoglou had said that rather than rest, maybe people understood it a bit more. But his time will come. He's a very talented player. We've seen what he can do, what he's able to do. He's already got his first goal as well with a lovely bit of movement against Villa and anticipation and all that. And yeah, he needs to. I think he maybe needed, in an ideal world, a slightly more gentle introduction to the team, being brought in as games wore on and as an impact sub, build his confidence, build his understanding, rather than just being thrown in there like so many players at Spurs have this season.
Yeah, I just checked the stats. They did him a bit of a disservice. He was 13 touches in the end, so he had one extra one in the second half. But
2 in the second half, that's mad.
Yeah. But just prior to coming off, there was this really good opening for him until Núñez came in and just nicked the ball off him.
The doggy, wasn't it? The two of them ran up the pitch.
They did. So if it weren't for Núñez, we may have been talking about a Tel goal. What I did say on the podcast, probably nearer the start of the season, in terms of Lucas Bergvall, the European games would probably suit him more.
Yeah.
Until he gets used to the pace and intensity of the Premier League. And then we might see a different Mathys Tel on Thursday in the Europa League against AZ, playing against a Dutch side, probably more similar to a German side who's been used to playing against during his time at Bayern, rather than getting used to the Premier League. But he's only going to have a couple more games until Dom Solanke's back and leads the line. And that's when we might see a shift in position for Tel. But I agree with you. I think just patience is required. I can remember when Decky first came. I think came off the bench against Brighton in the Cup. About 20 minutes, people were writing him off. Look at him now.
Like Bambi on ice, wasn't it? Yeah, he was falling all over the place.
Tottenham's best player now. Moving on from Tel then, there was a couple of chances towards the end, notably Son testing Ederson, and then that one from Pat Matasar at the end. That would have been a controversial goal, shall we say, because of VAR. I think what it sounded like, VAR were telling them, the ref, we agree with your decision, or something, like the goal should stand. That's what the commentators were saying. It sounded like
the ref gave a free kick for a handball. Yeah,
right.
From what I could gather, from what we were kind of understanding in the stadium, was that he'd given the handball. They awarded a free kick. VAR were checking that. It took far too long to check that. And just after watching 17,000 different angles and versions of it, couldn't find enough evidence to overturn the handball decision. And it was difficult. There were times we were all sitting there in the press box because we get the screens and you can see the VAR replay. There were times we were going, it's handball. And then a couple of seconds later, we'd see a different replay and we go, maybe not. I don't know. Maybe it comes off Gray's back. Maybe it's like really difficult. And I think that's the key. If you don't really know because you're looking at a million angles yourself and you can't work it out, there's not enough evidence to overturn the on-pitch decision. And I think that's fair enough. I don't think you could have probably complained had it been a goal, but likewise, I don't think there was enough to overturn it in the moment.
Yeah, it's on commentary. It just sounded like what's happening here? It should be a goal. All of a sudden, Spurs are on the counter attack, and then I think Sonny, that header from Son, probably
hits his back, doesn't it? Sonny
just lifts it that touch too much for Sarr.
Maybe. But the other side, you could argue, is that if Sonny doesn't get any connection, it probably is coming towards Sarr at like a waist height. It's probably all I'm saying is it's not definite that he's going to kind of get a clean connection anyway. But yes, it does raise the ball a little bit, so he's kind of stretching his head up. And I mean, the stadium would have gone mad had that gone in. It would have been a brilliant moment.
Yeah, I mean, chalk and cheese really for Tottenham. First half to the second half, a lot more chances, better football, and point probably. Would you say would have been the best result, fair result?
Yeah, I think so, because like Vicario, I was looking at it, had 4 saves to make in the first half. I'm not saying all of them were like spectacular, impressive saves kind of thing. And I think over the course of the game, Ederson had 6. I looked up. Okay. So, he had more saves to make. Again, not all of them like really difficult ones. Probably the most difficult would have been the Son one, would have been the Danso tipping over in the first half as well. I would say with Spurs, it was more about also the little moments where they should have done more, like Porro putting in a couple of crosses, the Odobert one, of course the Sarr one, the Tel and a doggy break as well. There was actually another Sarr shot, which everyone's first impression was he'd sliced it. And I said to someone, I think that was headed away from the front of goal. And then lo and behold, the ball goes out and they gave a throw to Spurs. So it was like, okay, it wasn't actually sliced. So even moments like that, I think it was Spence maybe teed him up. I'm trying to remember who it was now. But yeah, that was another moment. There were just loads of little kind of instances like that where just a little bit of a cleaner contact or a little bit more thought needed to be done in the final pass. But I would say a point was fair. Quick question for you. Timo Werner sub. All the other subs I got, that I'd imagine probably the logic would have been because he at the Etihad had set up the last goal. What did you think of that sub? And I know it's in hindsight.
Well, it didn't work out as planned, did it? So he didn't really offer anything in his.
Would you have put Dane on?
I'd have probably gone with Dane over Timo, and I think a lot of fans probably would have said Mikey Moore should have been on the bench over Timo, given Mikey is going to be the future for Spurs. Timo, it's hard to see him staying beyond this loan spell at Spurs, and I think you need to be having an eye on the future at least. But I can understand why Andrew's included Timo on the bench, because he's an experienced player.
Yeah.
After all, it's just not happened for him this season at Spurs, and it's just hard to see where he's going to get regular minutes from between now and May, because he's not in the Europa League squad. Once Solanke's back, Tel's another option on the left. Richarlison can play on the left. Odobert can play on the left. There's Son. So where's his football going to come from? But I think you mentioned there was one bit of play which didn't happen for Timo, made the wrong choice, and Ange went a bit mad.
Yeah, it was. Unfortunately, it was kind of what's become classic Timo, which is a shame, because what we were saying, like in the first months of his loan last season, was his go-to thing was the right thing, which was get to the byline, cut it across. That's it. Just do that. That's great. If you can do that, that's part of the system, works brilliantly. But what he started to do is kind of not do that and then try to cut inside. And when he cuts inside, unfortunately, nothing's happening. It's just not. There's no end product when he does that. And he did cut inside, and he tried to play a short pass to someone and just gave it to City, and they were able to break. And Andrew was going mad at him. He was kind of trying to point across and just like, get it across, put it into the box. That's what we're trying to do. And he like turned to his bench and he just like, with a bit of a look as if to say, like, oh, what are you going to do, kind of thing. But then what are you going to do is probably not put Timo on into that situation. I still feel like with Dane, Tel's struggling to hold the ball up, as we now know, only touched the ball twice. You've got Dane Scarlett, who in front of that same South stand they're attacking, last game he was played there, scored one, got an assist. Sorry, we're not counting assists, but he got one. And I just think, that was the situation to throw him into. He got a great, again, sorry to say, assist at Ipswich, and he showed the physical side then. I just feel like that would have kind of, just allowed Spurs to kind of keep everyone in the right places. And obviously it wasn't taken. And I agree with the whole Mikey Moore thing as well, one for the future. And, Werner can't even play at Alkmaar because he's been taken out of the squad for Tel. I feel sorry in a way for Werner, because obviously there's a player in there, but I feel like every time he's getting an opportunity now, he's fluffing it. And there's only so many times you can kind of give him that opportunity, and you just have to question why he keeps getting them, I suppose. And like you said, I think we're looking at a microscopic chance of them taking that permanent deal in the summer now.
Yep. You were in the post-match press conference after the game for both managers. Pep praising quite a few Tottenham players. I think Lucas Bergwall, one of them, and then there was a bit of a moment on the pitch as well, Jed Spence and Pep.
Yeah, it was. Pep does this stuff, doesn't he? He's like, I don't. Pep does this stuff. That was a really weird kind of general comment, but he kind of almost has these kind of game after the game when he goes on the pitch, and you're always wondering, what's he going to do? What's he going to do? Who's he going to talk to? It's normally an opposition player, and it almost from the outside looks like he's tapping him up or something kind of thing. I think we've seen him kind of do almost like a coaching session with someone else's player at times. I think he's done that a couple of times. Like, why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do that? And he'd already just had a long chat with Postecoglou that was at first we thought it was like, ooh, is this a bit of a kind of a serious thing? And then we kind of realised they're all laughing and putting their arms around each other and stuff. But then he went over to Jed Spence, and he was like, playful slap to the face, poked him in the chest a few times, and he was asked in the press conference afterwards, like, what was that all about? What were you saying? And he's just, I'm having to change it slightly because his version of it with his version of English kind of made it sound a little bit like it was a criticism when it wasn't. He was essentially, to paraphrase, saying, "You're too fast. Stop doing so much running," kind of thing. It was difficult for us, and that was what led to more praise about Bergvall being unstoppable, and Udogie and Sonny and Kulusevski and all these players that could just run through the lines. But yeah, I think that's all part of the Jed Spence kind of journey right now, that he's getting people like Guardiola coming up to him and saying stuff like that. Thomas Tuchel in the stands as well, watching on. It all builds towards, hopefully, him continuing to get confidence. And look, he has to start Alkmaar. If he goes with Porro and Udogie, I think there's every reason for everyone to be very upset, because you can't just take your informed player out. And I know there'll be an aspect of, and I'm sure he'll say afterwards, but I've got to think about Bournemouth on Sunday, and I've got to think about who I'm playing in that. But I'm sorry, the big game right now. And again, you could argue maybe this is the whole starting lineup thing as well, even though it was 8 days before the big game, the Europa League game. That's what Spurs' season is kind of hinging on right now. You play your best players, and Spence is one of your best players. But yeah, I stayed for the Guardiola press conference. Normally, if Ange comes in first, I'll ask the questions, whatever, get his stuff, then go out and start typing it out, and I'll listen to whatever the next manager says later. Whereas when it's Pep, you kind of think, I'm going to stick around for this because he can say anything. Who knows what? And I was intrigued to see if anyone would ask about the on-pitch stuff. And yeah, it was very complimentary of Spurs. I know it's easy to dismiss that after a win for City, but he was very much saying, they've got an exceptional manager. You can see the way they play. You can see this is more like the old Tottenham now when they've got the players back. And he said as well, which not many people will kind of admit to, he said, and they still don't have Van de Ven Romero, who are two of the best defenders in the Premier League. So, yeah, he was quite praiseworthy of Tottenham.
Yeah. So that defeat leaves Spurs 9 points off the top half of the Premier League table, because Brighton beat Bournemouth, Fulham won at Wolves. Villa are now 10th. They got hammered at Palace 4-1. So a lot of work for Spurs to do in the 11 remaining games of the Premier League season. Weekend off now. Plenty of time to prepare for the Alkmaar game in the Europa League next Thursday. One final thing before we call it a day. We've got an award to talk about, and that's Archie Gray winning the Young Player of the Year award at the London Football Awards on Thursday evening. This is in the end of February, coming away with the Young Player of the Award for the 24-25 season. Fair result for you, the outright winner. I mean, it is. Surely, is it too early for this thing?
Yes. Where you started that, I thought you were going to present an award to someone. We've got an award. Look, I am a massive fan of Archie Gray, and I think he's going to be a brilliant player. And I think he's done incredibly well this season to fit into so many different positions and to make the step up brilliantly. I think Cole Palmer's probably going to be thinking, what? But certainly I think Archie Gray would have been up there in terms of kind of what he's done. I think Lucas Bergvall would be up there as well. But I guess Archie Gray probably in terms of minutes is going to be right up there as well. Again, all little things that are all helpful for his journey. And I absolutely agree. You just shouldn't ever give out end of season awards in February. There's so much more to happen. But yeah, well done to him.
Did you see his interview with?
I haven't yet, actually. No.
BBC Radio London, asking him if he'd been to Chick King over the road from the stadium, and if he'd tried these local kebab establishments, and that, which is not. I mean, he could come back a couple of stone heavier in the summer if that's his plan for the pre-season to go.
Did he look bewildered? Did he know what they were talking about?
Yeah, well, they were asking him about how he settled into life in London, favourite spots in London, if he'd been to these places, etc. And he says he just likes chilling at home.
That's a
Really.
good diplomatic answer of no, I haven't been in the fast food place
Yeah.
opposite the stadium.
But he does know about chicken. He's just not been yet, but give him time. He might be there.
Absolutely. A well-known establishment, and rightly so.
Yeah, right. We'll call it a day on today's episode of Golden Guest Tottenham. We'll be back next week to look ahead to the AZ Alkmaar game and discuss whatever else happens in the world of Tottenham. So in the meantime, just keep with us at football.london for all your latest Tottenham news. To get the best discount off your NordVPN plan, go to nordvpn.com/goldguest. Our link will also give you 4 extra months on the 2-year plan. There's no risk with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. The link is in the podcast episode description box.